Hello here and welcome again to the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Wash, gentlemen, and these are the weeks why Husker Online exists, why the Husker Online Show exists. Because where do we even start? I mean,
Christmas gifts.
Yeah. What are you doing for the holidays?
What's your favorite holiday side item? No, we're not doing that kind of show today. It's crazy to think about a week ago, we had no idea where this was all heading. Marcus Satterfield then gets on that plane.
Oh, yeah.
Even last Monday, Kyle McCord didn't go in the portal till Monday.
Right, he did.
And then they were in Columbus, Ohio by Tuesday at 5 p.m. That plane landed in Columbus.
God, good job, Sean.
And they met with Kyle McCord. And I felt by Friday of last week, you felt like he was the guy they were zoning in on based on the other tea leaves and things that were kind of falling around. Blake Shapen goes to Mississippi State. That's out of the way. You got Cam Ward, who's at Miami right now, and always felt kind of like a long shot.
It's not done.
Not done, but he's not no scheduled visits to Nebraska.
No,
obviously.
Right.
So then Sam Leavitt wanted to hear back from Nebraska. They visited the Michigan State quarterback. Well, he commits to Arizona State.
Yeah, and didn't you think when Leavitt committed, or even when Leavitt said, he told me last Thursday, that Nebraska hadn't been in contact with him. That's when I started thinking, okay, they must have somebody, McCord,
because you want your key number one guy here first.
Yeah.
Because then you kind of react from there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And guys, you don't get that long to bring these visitors in.
No.
I mean,
they have till Saturday in this case.
Dead period. And then January 3rd would be the next time you could have a visitor.
January 3rd through January 7th.
And in transfer portal time, that's years. I mean, we're talking a couple of weeks.
It is a long time.
I mean, the whole world in the transfer portal could blow up by January 3rd. Yes. So this is the week. They got to get it done. Kyle McCord gets to campus Monday, okay?
And he got here. Yeah,
and you're thinking, all right, on his visit, things are looking really good, and they still look very good. By Monday afternoon, Chad Simmons from On3 confirms that Dylan Raiola, the Georgia quarterback recruit and commit since May, is essentially still considering Nebraska. And Hayes Fawcett from On3, both from our great national support team, breaks the news that Dylan Raiola will take an official visit to Nebraska on Saturday or Friday of this week. So much to go through there, because now it's like, wow, could they get 2 5-star quarterbacks? Could they get both these guys? And it feels like it's very possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's trending that way. And there's precedent for this happening. Go look at what happened at Texas when they brought in Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning in the same class.
Yep.
And
four-game redshirt rule.
Yeah, and we're able to basically make it work through full season with having 2 elite level quarterbacks. So this is something that has been done and has proven to be done effective when managed correctly. So as long as the interests between all 3 parties involved, Raiola, McCord, and Nebraska, align, and everybody's on the same page, you're not going to have any egos bruised or upset or anything like that. This is something that could very realistically work in Nebraska.
Now, Steve Sipple, it's been very quiet in the Raiola camp. I mean, I know you've got a long-standing relationship with Dominic. Obviously, I've known him for years, but we still haven't heard anything direct from their camp. What's your read on that?
Oh, well, my read is that Raiola will be a Nebraska Cornhusker. I would say my read on it is 90%, and that's probably conservative. I think you always leave a little wiggle room in that situation because of just the way recruiting is. But yeah, that's my read. My read is it's virtually done.
Because if he was sticking with Georgia, they would get out in front of this thing
absolutely
as quickly as they possibly could.
Right.
They would shoot it all down, etc. But clearly something happened with Dylan Raiola in Georgia about a week ago.
We think so, yeah.
That changed things. During their in-home visit or some sort of conversations with the Georgia coaching staff. And you can speculate it regarding NIL or whatever, playing time. There's a lot of ways this could go. But whatever happened changed that dynamic. And then Donovan Raiola, the uncle of Dylan Raiola, the brother of Dominic Raiola, also gets a new contract, $175,000. He got his own NIL deal. Right, he got $175,000 raise on his
commission on it.
Easy. No, I mean, yeah. Now here's the thing. The only thing I'd say about Donovan is I think it almost gets overlooked sometimes. If things are not going perfectly with with Dylan in Georgia, who would be the first to know? He's sitting right in Nebraska's office. I mean, it's a pretty good advantage. Now, he got his raise based on how the offensive line played. And
he's making $325. He'll make $500,000.
Yeah, he got bumped good. And that's, you know what, offensive line coaches should be making about a minimum of $500,000 at a place like Nebraska. But yeah, I mean, I think it helps this situation. It was kind of presented as Nebraska's making a late push to flip Raiola. I think it kind of worked out organically, almost like you say, Sean. It feels like it's more like something happened and Nebraska jumped in and said, okay, well, here's a spot for you.
Go back to the narrative from Georgia, the fact that not only are they not dismissing it, like it's almost begin a push to where he's running from competition. He's not that good anyway. And usually when stuff like that happens, that means there's actually a real breakup that happened, to where someone is salty and they're putting out a narrative that, well, we didn't want this guy anyway. Right. That's usually what happens in those situations.
Georgia was, I mean, from what I could gather, they're pretty stunned, though. I mean, I talked to Rusty Manziel, who is as plugged in with Georgia as anybody. You know, I called them yesterday morning. This would have been Tuesday morning. I'm losing track of my days here. Or no, Monday morning. Today is Tuesday right now.
Yeah, he called him yesterday.
And he had not heard anything on this.
Oh boy!
Like it was, and he was heading to broadcast the Georgia State Championship football games in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. He's a part of the broadcast there for those games, and obviously there were a lot of Georgia coaches there and other people. So he spoke with more people. Chad Simmons, our own on-3 writer, was at those games too. So we had two boots on the ground at at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium where other coaches were present, including members of the Georgia coaching staff. So from there, the ball just took off at that point. But, you know, it's this visit weekend. Like, what is the timeline? Will he announce his commitment on the visit, before the visit?
Right.
I can't imagine he wants us to be overly dramatic. It would be his third announcement.
Yeah. I don't know, Sean. They seem to like it. But maybe not. I don't know. Just an announcement.
We're ready. Hayes Fawcett edit.
Yeah, and we're ready. I mean, the story's written. I mean, that's the way I look at it. This is not going to take anybody by surprise at this point.
The surprise already happened.
Yeah.
And our page views and numbers yesterday sure reflect that.
Here's the deal. I mean, I told you, I heard Sunday night, I got a text from somebody close to Dominic that said, be ready for this. So Sunday night is when I called you the next morning. I didn't know what to make of it. I was kind of on the McCord. I had McCord a lot on my mind. And then this was like, okay, it looks like this is something we have to deal with. Then it quickly became apparent Monday morning, this is something we have to deal with. It's huge news. Almost seemed like fiction. Like it almost seems like a fiction novel. McCord comes into Lincoln for a visit, but this 5-star quarterback is decommitting from Georgia on the same day, and everybody's saying he's going to go to Nebraska.
It'd be a hell of a movie.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I can't imagine what the McCord family's thinking. And it was probably a little disruptive, but I don't. Now what you wonder is, can you get them both? That's the key. Can you get them both?
That's the big unknown. Again, transfers, especially of that profile, you know, they don't need a 5-star #1 quarterback looking over their shoulder on every rep. Like they want some stability if they're going to move from a place like Ohio State. You want some insurances there.
Some guys would handle it better than others, though. Some guys
what we don't know about McCord.
Yeah,
maybe he's not. Yeah, maybe he's not afraid.
Right? Maybe
like would McCord say, "All right, I'm just going to go to Syracuse, Rutgers, somewhere like that now instead."
I don't know.
Or is Raiola okay with only playing 4 games,
right,
and taking the keys of the car in 25?
Don't know. These are things we don't know. We don't. Oh, the other thing you said, we don't know that, Rob, and we also don't know if McCord has another visit lined up. We know he's in Lincoln. We don't know if he's going anywhere else. So that's a huge unknown to me.
Like, did somebody, as this all played out, try to make a run at McCord and say, don't do anything at Nebraska? You know, like, let this thing play out, maybe take another trip. That's the other X factor that could really change this if another team jumps in on the news of the Raiola.
How much money do they have? That's another X factor. How much money do they have? Because Nebraska can make his trip worthwhile.
Well, I will say, any questions about NIL at Nebraska, I think this week has answered a lot of them. like where Nebraska is, you've got to have players that are worth NIL, like for a collective to flex muscles. You can't just overpay guys that aren't valued at what they're at. But if they could get 2 5-star quarterbacks, McCord and Raiola, in a single week, along with possibly Julian Fleming, a 5-star receiver from Ohio State, he was going to be a 3 or a 4 receiver at Ohio State. He'd be a number 1 at Nebraska. That would be quite a week in a statement for Nebraska's NIL collective 1890.
McCord's in a good position for a couple of reasons. The market for top-level quarterbacks is good. As Matt Rhule said himself, that he said for top-level quarterbacks it's $1 million to $1.5 million to $2 million. Now, McCord might not be a $1 million quarterback at some places, but he could be at Nebraska because the second part of it is Nebraska needs it. They need it. I mean, so McCord, it kind of aligns really well for him. The market's good for top-level quarterbacks, and, Nebraska really needs me. They really need me.
Well, and for, with Rhule mentioning the market for quarterbacks,
right,
$1 to $2 million. If they get both of them, that's upwards of $4 million on 2 players.
I don't know if they pay.
Hey,
I'm just saying,
they're not paying $2 million. I think $1 million from McCord, if I had to guess, is more realistic.
I think $1 million. Yeah.
So they're not doing that with Raiola.
Well, I don't know. That's the question, Rob. I don't know that. I don't know. Now, you've heard Rhule as much as I have. I don't think Rhule's big on paying incoming unproven players as much.
Even if he's the number 1 quarterback,
you might get him
of a legacy player.
Right. You might have to pay him. Yeah, you might have to pay him, but not upwards
or
of
a path that shows like him to get to where what NIL contracts in Nebraska are generally 6 months or 1 year.
Rob, you could get me to 2, maybe. $2 million.
So then look at it that way. They're spending around $2 million on 2 players.
Yeah.
It's championship level NIL money right there.
There's a lot of boosters, though, that would gladly love to say they were the money behind a guy.
Oh, yeah. And they have the money. They don't got to go looking for the money, right, Sean?
No.
They don't have to go looking for this.
They have the money, but I also think the last week or two has rallied a lot more people to want to support NIL as well.
This is good. It's good. Here's why.
All right, we got to get to a break here.
Okay, then
let's pick this
save
up.
it for segment 2.
All right, when we come back, we'll continue this quarterback discussion next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show.
You're listening to the Husker Online Show, your authority on Nebraska athletics.
And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, talking transfer portal quarterbacks. Dylan Raiola, who in Nebraska right now is not talking about quarterbacks. I mean, I know I can't go anywhere right now to not be stopped. I mean, it's kind of captivated everyone, and we're going to get into that discussion more. But before I do that, this segment of the Husker Online Show brought to you by Omaha Steaks. And there's no better holiday gift for your coworkers, your family, your son, your daughter, whoever that lives out of state. Send them a box of Omaha Steaks, and they've got a great deal right now. Not only are there a lot of boxes right now for 50% off at Omaha Steaks, Husker Online, we're going to give you another $30 off by simply using promo code Husker. Now, there is an order minimum required to receive the $30 off, but this is an outstanding deal where you can get a box of steaks, and they have more than just steaks. Great side items, pork, chicken. Get your Christmas prime rib. Get one of the many different holiday assortment boxes of Omaha Steaks. Not only 50% off, but you'll get $30 off as well by using promo code Husker. Take advantage of that. Thanks again to Omaha Steaks for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online Show. All right, let's get back into the money and the discussion, guys, of the quarterback. Because I think about it, I talked to you about this off air, Sip. It's so big. I mean, if you're Trev Alberts, you're trying to raise momentum to get the money for the stadium.
This big stadium project, which is $450 million, but probably more like $600 if it goes with the way they want.
If you're the collective, you're trying to raise money to up the profile of Nebraska. Well, do you know what didn't help the football season? The 5-7 turnover season, 31 turnovers, a bunch of 13-10 losses, a bunch of one-score losses. That season didn't motivate a lot of people to want to open up their checkbooks.
No, it didn't. You're right.
But
to me, it represents this. It's Nebraska's showing, and this is Matt Rhule just being, this isn't very sexy to say, but he's just being pragmatic. Who's coming in? Washington, Oregon, USC, and UCLA. You got to compete with these teams. This is not, you don't do that with nice little stories. You do that with dudes. You do that. Just watch Kyle McCord on tape compared to what you saw at Nebraska this year. Watch it. Just go watch tape of him and you'll understand. Go watch Cam Ward. Those are the dudes that get you over the top.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what you saw at Nebraska was the quarterback position drag Nebraska back. You got to get a guy at that position that can lead you forward and buoy your program, not sink it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and again, it's getting real now. And I really, really am impressed and praise Matt Rhule and Satterfield and that staff for being very aggressive. It's not playtime, boys.
Yeah, you don't raise $225 million of private money by just cute stories. Like,
no, you got to go win games.
What did you see at all, Robin, last year that would lead you to believe that what they currently have at quarterback is enough to roll the dice to try to figure it out?
Nothing.
You didn't see it, did you?
And
no. I mean, if you're trying to get to a bowl game, yeah, maybe you can get 6 or 7 wins with Chubba, but like Nebraska's not in the business of playing for a bowl game.
Eking into a bowl
especially
game.
Now with the shifting landscape. Trev Albert's talked about this. Like, I mean, there's going to be a point to where all this expansion is eventually going to become contraction. And if you're not at the grown-up table, you're going to get left out.
Yeah.
And so Nebraska is doing everything it physically can to make sure it has a spot.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a move like that.
Yeah.
When you go and pay that kind of money for a quarterback, or maybe pay that kind of money for 2 quarterbacks,
5-star quarterbacks
of that caliber, that shows that you are willing to do whatever it takes to play championship level football.
Think about in the context what Rob just said in the context of Ohio State. Ohio State lost 1 game and decided we got to get another quarterback.
Yep.
Okay.
He had turnovers in the biggest game of the year.
Right. We got to get another.
And they didn't necessarily say that, but they didn't.
He didn't guarantee him anything.
They didn't lay it out that he was the guy. And it's a tough. I mean, Ohio State ran Joe Burrow off. I mean, there's always politics with the quarterback position at a school like Ohio State.
Yeah.
I mean, they chose Dwayne Haskins over Joe Burrow.
Let's be clear what happened at Ohio State. Ryan Day was asked on Sunday, would McCord, do you have your starting quarterback for the bowl game? And Ryan Day said, I can't say that right now. The next day, McCord was in the portal. That's what happened. I mean, that position, one thing we got to get used to, it's going to be volatile. That position is going to be really volatile. Not every year, but a lot of years. It's going to be volatile. You seeing stuff that's kind of weird. Like, why'd Will Howard go into the transfer portal?
Avery Johnson,
who hasn't hardly played.
Well, he scored 5 touchdowns in 1 game.
Avery Johnson. I mean, yeah, but you're just seeing, well, even Cam Ward.
Avery Johnson's one of the best recruits Kansas State's landed in years.
Yeah. Okay. I'll get that. Cam Ward, why not stay at Washington State?
Because they're no longer in the Pac-12 and they're going to be playing a Mountain
so
West
he's
schedule.
Off. He's off.
Well, and he's going to cash in.
Right. Oh, I know.
I mean,
And what the top programs I think are going to do, it looks like to me, is just say every year we might change who's in the portal. We might just go get him.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why wouldn't Lincoln Riley do that? If Will Howard ends up at USC, not quite good enough. Okay, let's see who's in the portal next year. Go get that guy.
And if you mark your territory that you can afford these play, I mean, look what it's done for Nebraska. Like, once word kind of got around that Nebraska could possibly pay what it takes to get a quarterback, they were able to meet with Cam Ward.
Yeah.
They were able to meet with Kyle McCord.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Dylan Raiola became interested in Nebraska. I mean,
he might have been anyway, but I see what you're saying.
I'm saying when
people get wind of that money,
the money is real.
Yeah.
And I think if you're Trev Alberts, I mean, it's almost, I said this to you off, it's almost better that Nebraska didn't make a bowl game.
It's in the desperation factor.
Sell that.
Because if let's say they eke out 6-6.
Okay.
And there's a little bit more momentum behind the current quarterbacks because they figured out a way to get one of those wins they lost.
And they go win their bowl game. Chubba
and then they win their bowl, and then it's dicey.
Because what you're suggesting is they might do that and then just stand pat.
And then the abrupt ending of the way the season ended, 4 one-score losses, multiple 13-10 losses.
That's a really interesting thought.
It closed the book so quickly that it allowed kind of the wheels in motion to get to where we're at right now.
Think about how provocative that is, that thought, because if they were in a bowl game, they'd be practicing right now with Chubba and Heinrich Harburg leading the top unit. while they're looking for another guy?
Well, and think about this.
Yeah, you're right, Sean. It might be just cleaner this way, right?
What if they they're doing bowl practices as we're speaking right now on this show?
They would be.
And McCord's in town.
Oh, yeah.
Raiola's in town this
awkward.
weekend. And then all of a sudden, let's just throw this out there. Chuba enters the portal.
Right.
Well, Chuba had a surgery, so I don't even know. I would assume he would have tried to play in a bowl if they made a bowl, but the whole bowl game discussion would have been.
Yeah, you're right. You could sell that. That's a pretty good sell. That it might be better off that they didn't play. But
And look, I mean, we all wanted to go to a bowl.
It's hard to say, but all these moves are being made in part. I mean, you're jetting Satterfield all over the country, which you probably could have done if he was. It's just not ideal to be preparing for a bowl and going after a quarterback or quarterbacks to succeed the guys that are in your practices right now.
Satterfield would be out recruiting. All the coaches for these 2 weeks are going to be
now.
out.
You're right. People are going to wonder now, Sean, what's Chuba going to do?
I would say right now things have changed. I think
Writing's on the wall.
There you go.
If McCord is in and Raiola is in, how could you feel good about now? Chuba graduates, so he's got options.
He can go.
He can be a double transfer. Jeff Sims, we should say, is in the portal. Officially now. That was last week speculated that he would enter. He's now in. So that room has completely cleared itself out. And you go back to a year ago.
Not completely, because they're still there. Purdy and Heinrich are still
there.
I
mean, it could clear itself out.
Could.
Think
It
about
has not cleared itself out.
Logan Smothers left.
Right.
Heinrich is left.
Heinrich may not leave because he could play another position.
Yeah, like even if they take these guys, both of them are not runners. So Harper could easily have a role as a wildcat guy and another role in this team. And
down near the goal line. Yeah, you could see that. But come on. I mean, let's not dance around it too much. If it works out like we think, or like it could, okay, let's do it this way. Raiola's, I mean, I'd just be shocked if Raiola doesn't end up in Nebraska. McCord, we don't know. But if it ends up with McCord and Raiola, Chuba, you would think would choose another place to play.
Yeah, I mean, especially right now, like he's got the high school profile. He's got the last name. Like he'll have options.
Yeah,
he put together some good tape. I mean,
Pretty
it wasn't perfect, but
right.
He's got some highlights. You know that shows that what he's capable of.
Yeah.
Like he'll have out of all that current group, including Jeff Sims, he's got the best ceiling. For another school.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk more on the transfer portal because there are some more visitors coming in as well. I want to hit on a few more of those things and storylines to watch. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. Before we continue transfer, recruiting, visitor talk, this segment of the Husker Online Show brought to you by nuts.com. And gentlemen, we just got a gigantic gift basket of nuts.com. And it's like a treasure chest. I mean, it's sitting on top of our office fridge. And I mean, you could dig through that thing and continue to find something.
Yes, lunch. That's what it is to me.
I've got a bag of the pistachios right here.
Oh, look at you.
And
yeah, the chocolate pecan clusters lasted like all 5 minutes.
Yeah, the bourbon pecans are
the bourbon pecans
are the real deal.
Yeah.
Like when Steve
Sean,
Sipple rips that bag open, we don't even need to worry about you ripping the seal because they're gone.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
You should see when I grab that bag. Sean just like his eyes follow me all the way to my desk. Like, how many taking? How many taking?
There's a limit.
Yeah.
Sipple kind of eats all the dried fruit though. That's your deal.
I like the dried apricots.
I'm not into those. So
good. So you got
childhood thing. My mom used to always buy dried fruit, and I loved it. Dried apricots.
All right, we got a great special for Husker Online listeners. Go to nuts.com/Husker, and we're going to give you free shipping. And it was $29 more free shipping, and you'll receive a free gift. So take advantage of this great special we're offering for our listeners. Just nuts.com/Husker. Make your order. You'll get free shipping and a free gift as well. Great time to stock up with the holidays, with family coming over, events coming over. Load up for your office. That's what we did here at Husker Online. Nuts.com/Husker to take advantage of that great special. Okay, I want to get back into kind of the visitor situation and what's going on, because obviously we've hit on McCord here this week, and we've hit on Raiola, but a couple of other transfer portal names are on that visitor list for Nebraska this weekend. Julian Fleming got into town on Tuesday. And then on Friday, another name that kind of emerged out of nowhere is Bly Hill from Mount St. Joseph's High School in Maryland originally, but he's at St. Francis, which is a small FCS school in Pennsylvania. He's a 6'3" defensive back with 3 years of eligibility.
Interesting.
Very under the radar. I mean, like On3 did not even have a profile made for him, which is rare.
Yeah.
To kind of be that under the radar. But Bly Hill is a new name that has kind of emerged here in the portal for Nebraska.
It's from Pennsylvania.
It's from Maryland.
But where's St. Francis?
St. Francis is in Pennsylvania.
Right. That just has Rhule and Cooper written all over it, right? That's what that is.
So I don't know if there's a huge need for defensive backs, but clearly there is. I mean, they see this as a guy that they think can help, and he fits more that, hey, this is somebody we can have in the program for 3 years. Kyle McCord, Julian Fleming, 1 year transfers.
1 year guys.
But this is more of a longer term guy.
Yeah, Fleming could become your number one receiver. This guy is sometimes, Sean, you just add players that you think are good and you don't worry about the position. Just add
especially
talent.
with this staff.
Yeah.
I mean, they've developed a pretty strong track record of just because a guy is listed on his high school recruiting profile to position, that doesn't mean he's going to be there a year or two from now.
Right.
So they see long term of how guys can fit in different spots, linebacker, offense, safety, corner. Like there's a variety of spots that can be considered a defensive back.
You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. Yeah, the Fleming thing too, because we all agree that they don't really have a defined number one receiver. I mean, I have a hard time saying that Malachi Coleman can be your number one, that Jalen Lloyd, Jaden Doss can be the number one.
I'll tell you what, those guys are pretty good.
They're good players.
They could be, but they're not right now.
Can you target those guys 12 times in a game?
Unclear, because they've never been targeted that much.
Seems that you just got. I kind of would want to see what kind of progress they make in the offseason, but I get where you're saying. Julian Fleming is, I think he had 79 catches at Ohio State in his
career,
yeah.
about 1,000 yards.
Yeah, he's a big body. What I like, a big body guy. I mean, pretty big body, 6'2", 210. Grown man. Yeah, so he'd be perfect.
I mean, here's the deal. He went to play wide receiver at Ohio State.
Right.
There's no program in the country that puts out NFL wide receivers like Ohio State.
And he was 3 or 4. You know, he was their third or fourth option.
Think about that.
That's pretty good.
Think about the room he was in. And he was the third or fourth guy.
And this is a Pennsylvania high school legend. I mean, this is a Pennsylvania 5-star receiver.
Number one player in Pennsylvania in high school.
Number one player in Pennsylvania. Now, I do my Alante Brown bit. That Alante Brown used to say, best player in Chicago. That's pretty good. That'd be fun to say. You're the best player in Pennsylvania?
A little different.
Yeah, that's a lot different.
Well, and Kyle McCord is also a PA guy.
Yeah.
Technically a Jersey guy that played in Philly for, and that's pretty common in that part of the country where kids that live in New York City or live in, New Jersey will go to Philadelphia or they'll go to New Jersey.
Especially Jersey. I mean, one bleeds into the other.
Yeah, to play football. If you live in New York, you play high school football in New Jersey. In this case, St. Joseph's in Philadelphia is a power that attracts New Jersey kids and players from everywhere to come play there because of that program. So two big name guys.
One thing that Derek mentioned to me, Derek McCord, was that relationship with Rhule and Satterfield goes clear back to Satterfield and Rhule at Temple. Because you think about Derek McCord was a quarterback at Rutgers. So he's in that football community. And he mentioned, one of the first things he mentions to me is I've known Rhule and Satterfield since their days at Temple. That helps. I mean, a prior relationship can be really meaningful in this situation. And yeah, McCord was a 5-star big-time recruit. Kyle McCord was a 5-star big-time recruit. Now, his dad didn't play much at Rutgers. But Kyle, big-time player.
Now, the other thing to watch, I think, in the coming days is Daniel Kalen, the current quarterback recruit.
Yeah.
And, what is he thinking? His relationship is very good with Nebraska.
Yeah.
But how quickly did they get on the phone with him when the bomb started dropping on Monday? I mean, I think Kalen could live with McCord, but the Raiola thing is a whole different deal. And
it is.
You think about all the way back to 2021, these two have kind of competed with each other for Nebraska. I mean, Kalen got his offer first from Nebraska, then Raiola showed up to camp, a couple of weeks later and just blew the doors off. Had an unbelievable workout, got the offer, and immediately kind of jumped Kalen at that point. And he stayed over the top of Kalen over the entire recruiting process. Then he drops Nebraska.
Yeah.
Commits to Georgia.
Yeah.
And Kalen then gets the phone call and decommits from Missouri.
Yeah, they went to Kalen as the kind of the number 2 guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know,
And
but they told him that. They said, look, if it doesn't work out with Raiola, we're coming to you. And they did.
And within 5 days, he flipped.
Right.
And so, you know, the human being in you really feels for Daniel Kalen right now, knowing just that he's almost a victim of this process of big time college football right now. And that's the reality of what big time college football is.
I was gonna say, what did we just talk about earlier in this segment where this show was, you don't win championships with feel good stories.
No.
Like the in-state kid. Yeah, it would have been awesome. You know, kid from Bellevue West comes down, hometown hero, all that. Guess what? You have the opportunity to land the best quarterback in the 2024 class and one of the top transfer quarterbacks in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Tough. That's the business.
I mean, McCord comes ready-made. To me, it's largely a McCord discussion. It's not. I mean, come on. Raiola's a legacy. It's got to be hard to jump in. There's politics. But, man, McCord to me is the critical piece of this discussion because he's ready-made. He's 6'3", 215. He led a team to 11-1
He can run an
record.
offense.
Yeah, he's your week 1 starter.
Yeah, week 1 starter. He can make all the throws. He's tough mentally. You hear from people at Ohio State that his expression never changes. You don't know when he's up or when he's down. That's the exact kind of guy you need at Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
You know what you're getting, and he's not. His ratio touchdown to turnover is 26-8. So doesn't throw a lot of turnovers. In fact, one of the deciding factors when he was competing with Devin Brown for the starting job at Ohio State was Brown made turnovers. He didn't. And by the way, just think about Kyle McCord going through an off season of competition with a guy at Ohio State and how
mentally prepped.
Yeah. How intense that is.
It's a game day every practice.
Right. How much did that help him? I got to assume a ton, So yeah, this is really exciting. I hope I hope for Nebraska's sake, they can lock him down.
Mm-hmm.
All right. When we come back, we got a mailbag. I checked my tweet that I put out for the mailbag, and there was like over 100 posts. So
we'll get to all of them.
We will
be here till 4.
We'll get to the mailbag next. And Abby Barmore, by the way, in Tampa. So she will not be with us in the mailbag.
What's going on in Tampa?
As she is out there covering volleyball. So Abby got in Tuesday and kind of a day off, and then Wednesday begins all the festivities out there. So we'll get to the mailbag next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. This segment, Steve Sipple of the Husker Online Show, brought to you by
guys, Larson Motors. If you're looking for a new vehicle, go for a new experience at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors, one of the Midwest's only dealerships with all the major brands in one spot. Finding your new Chevrolet, GMC, Hummer, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram never has been easier. Start your new experience today at LarsonMotorGroup.com or at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors, real people, real deals.
Well, guys, we had a lot of questions in the mailbag. A lot of them were kind of joking, like, boy, you guys aren't busy. So there were a lot of more comments than questions, but, great one to start out with is NIL. Just how does this all work? I don't understand NIL. This is from Kel, the coach, on Twitter or on X. I don't understand NIL. As far as scholarships go, is the 85 number an issue anymore? For instance, can't part of the negotiations be we are full, but we will just give you insert tuition for the 2023-4 school year here on top of your NIL money? And, I think that's a logical thought, logical question, but there are guardrails that prevent that very thing, what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's kind of like the old rule, like if you ran track and played football, the minute you played in a football game, you would be a football scholarship counter, not a track.
Yeah.
So football always is going to be the one that counts. And if you're recruited at all at some level by the school, and you sign, like you have to be a scholarship guy. Like there's no way to be like, we're just going to stuff them on NIL. I mean, they make it very difficult, Now, walk-ons,
Yeah, it's different, isn't it?
if you come in as a true walk-on,
Right.
unrecruited, no visits, nothing, unofficial visits or official visits, then there's some gray area, where you can move a guy back and forth, like a Colton Feast,
Okay.
someone like that a couple years ago. There were guys like that, but that's hard to do.
Okay, that's a good answer.
Yeah, and those guardrails have to be there because there's already so much separation between the haves and have-nots. It would be a completely different league if you didn't put any guidelines on what you can do with NIL. I mean, the rosters would just be ridiculous at the haves.
You have like 100 scholarship players,
Yes.
110 scholarship players
Yes.
in effect. Yeah, good answer, Sean.
Now, another question from Steven, and there's just a lot of logical names being thrown out there in the portal for Nebraska. ETN, a running back at Florida, it's kind of one of those pie in the sky names.
Is it pie in the sky?
I would say so.
Okay.
I would say right now Georgia and Ohio State are two of the teams in there, and I spoke to somebody. Why is he leaving? And evidently Florida doesn't have the type of NIL in place to get a guy, and so I think Nebraska fans thought Nebraska was like the only place where you question our NIL issues. It's everywhere. I think to compete with NIL, it's not easy. Like there's a lot of moving parts to running a good NIL collective. But yeah, ETN would be an outstanding player, but I don't think it's realistic right now. Thoughts?
Who else?
Well, Princely, Uman the brother of
Uman
Princewell. Somebody told you they thought that he was in Lincoln,
Right.
Which that wasn't true.
Okay.
And it sounds like Ole Miss for him.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, I mean, that's the thing about this time of year that's really hard.
Mhm.
You get a lot of people that reach out to you with information that may not be confirmed or verified.
Yeah, and I think we're finding too that agents can muddy up the waters too and try to use a place like Nebraska to their benefit. Just hook a kid's name to Nebraska
to get money,
drive the market up.
Right, drive the market up. Yeah, or what? Yeah, whatever agents do. So you do see a lot of misinformation. People kind of taking advantage of the situation. So, can I say this? That's why you come to Husker Online, because we don't traffic that way. That's not the way we do it. We try to confirm everything. We won't report stuff that's not true. We just won't do it.
There's a lot of dream reporting that goes on. We're like, you want it to happen, or you're optimistic, and people just say, let's roll the dice.
Right.
And if you're Joe Blow under a avatar or a fake name on Twitter, you can get away with that.
Yeah.
You can just make a graphic and say, imagine this lineup, and then everybody gets excited about it, and then they get mad when it doesn't happen.
But then if it's right, they go back and say, you were the true insider that put.
Yeah, please credit.
So it's dicey when you obviously have to use your real name and report
and have accountability.
And have accountability.
What we're talking about is accountability. Yeah.
But another question here was Dylan Raiola going to redshirt at Georgia? And Carson Beck, who was second team All SEC, at least as of now, is planning to return.
He's got another year left.
And so
he's got another year left.
And then you've got Gunnar Stockton there, and they lost another quarterback on the Georgia roster. He's transferring to Kentucky from the portal. But yeah, I think the thought was Raiola was going to redshirt and play up to 4 games at Georgia, as a redshirt. So none of that, I think, played a factor.
I don't know. We don't know what played a factor. Something, I don't know.
Well, that situation with their quarterback, I mean, and maybe him coming back for another year did, but
that might have affected it.
Whoever thought that he was going to go pro?
Carson Beck?
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
Like, did anyone ever think of him as a guy that would leave early?
Not necessarily. Maybe the thought was we're from the Raiola camp is we're better than Carson Beck. And then they saw him this year and said, okay, wait a second. He's pretty good. They had 1 loss. And he's coming back, and he's their guy. And so it could be that. Definitely could be that.
Who's starting between for McCord or Raiola? And I think we're all on the same page here that if they both can't come, it's McCord.
Yeah, if they're both here, McCord's not coming here to sit behind a freshman.
No,
like that's not.
I mean, the scenario would be that they start spring practice and Raiola's just markedly better, but he'd have to be markedly better for that to happen. You never know. I mean, I still think there is such thing as competition, although all this money and all these politics are sort of, they sort of work against that sometimes, where you do see guys handed jobs like Jeff Sims was
Last
handed,
year.
yeah,
Yep.
it was handed a job. But I'm
That
with
backfired.
you. I mean, I just want to be clear. McCord would be the guy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Agreed.
All right, got a question here from Cornhusker. Husker FB News goes on under the name Cornhusker. How the hell are we going to get down to 85 scholarship players?
this is Sean's area of
I,
expertise.
I don't really, you have no choice. Like, you can't just show up on August 1st and be like, hey, we're at 92. Like,
It'll be fine. It'll
let's see
work
what
out.
happens. Let's just roll the dice. Maybe they won't know.
Maybe they won't notice.
Like, we're going to be at 92.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a boat with
Yeah.
only so many seats on it.
Yeah. So
And-
how do they get down?
Well, Matt Rhule, as a new head coach, has until like essentially the end of the semester in the spring to not ask players back, but they can't be guys he recruited last year. They have to be current players on the roster that were recruited by the previous staff. And then they can offer those players two options. You can stay at Nebraska, be a student, keep your stipend, not play football, but you keep all the money and you're a student on kind of an early retirement package. Or you go on the portal and then you give up your money and your stuff. So
Is there some medical? I mean, some guys could take a medical.
they could do it, but the early retirement packages, as I like to call it, is, you don't have to be hurt. Like, you can just stay at Nebraska as a student, and get your money and finish out your education at Nebraska.
Would you say right now they're 15 over or so?
Ish, yeah. And
Ish.
it's so hard. And, we didn't even talk about this, but Isaac Gifford's coming back. Bryce Benhart's coming back, which I think we expected both those guys to return. Isaac Gifford was a little bit more up in the air. John Bullock still hasn't said one way or the other what he's going to do. But at least our thought was he was gone at this point. Henrich, we know, is gone at linebacker. Garcia Castaneda, is he coming back?
I don't know.
Is Marcus Washington going to get the waiver? I mean, there's a lot of pieces here still.
But with the ones that we know, Gifford especially, and Benhart, who was markedly better this past season than he was 2 years ago, those are significant. And it's not just because of the players and the veteran and leadership and experience that they bring, but I think it's further indication of the culture that Matt Rhule has built, where you get guys like that want to come back and are that we're trying to figure out who's leaving as opposed to who's staying. Like, that's such a contrast from previous off seasons. Like, how many guys does Nebraska lose? Can Nebraska keep? How many can they keep?
All right. Final question. What do you guys do on these slow December days? Well, there aren't very many of them.
I don't know. We haven't had them.
I mean, it kind of was slow after the Iowa week for
was it
for you, because the portal wasn't open yet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how was that busy for you? We did have that Rhule press conference that one day, but I mean, you try to get stuff done at your house. Like, there's usually a list of calls and things I've got to do at home. And
I'm trying to think of what it'd be like to relax. I haven't had that for a few years.
You sit down
20.
with a big box from nuts.com. And
There was one time I came home from a game. Maybe it was the Iowa game. I came home and I got some Fritos and some dip. And I did sit. I watched football for a couple hours, and that's about as relaxing as it's been.
This is why I like Friday nights on the road.
It wasn't.
I was just about to say that. So, like, with
Oh
basketball,
yeah.
like, that's my guilty pleasure now. That, like, going to like Minnesota, I'm going to Kansas State, I'm gonna go to Iowa coming up here, like that hotel, like, just to be able to wake up in a quiet hotel room without screaming kids jumping on me and me having to like go help take care of the house. I could just sit there and be a lazy bum.
Out.
Like, that's
veg out.
That's like my marquee moments.
Well, those Friday nights on the road
Yes.
for football for us.
Yeah, those are beautiful.
Because the hay's in the barn. Like, nothing's going to really ever happen.
No, team's locked in a hotel, and you're locked in on a steak.
And so we're at a steakhouse with a
Tomahawk.
big whiskey,
A tomahawk.
with a big whistle pig whiskey on a rock.
Yeah.
Just relaxing. I mean, that Friday night on the road is probably the most relaxing it gets.
Tornado Room was. I thought Tornado Room was a highlight
In Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah, even though that waiter, what did he call me? Pops. What it'll be, Pops.
Pops.
Yeah, that was an amazing moment in our lives.
All right.
What it'll be, Pops.
When we come back, Nebraska basketball got a big win over Michigan State. Now they'll play on Sunday at Kansas State. Robin Washett will give us the latest on that next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. Final segment here of the Husker Online show. So much more going on than just football. And we wanted to close with some basketball talk with Robin Washut as Fred Hoiberg's squad got a massive win on Sunday. They were underdogs against Michigan State. They get the win, and they kind of put their season right on track. Robin, if I would have told you Nebraska is 8-2 after 10 games, would that be more than holding serve in your opinion? Or about what you would have hoped?
Yeah, it would have been pretty much on par with my predictions. Now,
you're optimistic.
That's not taking into account the manner in which that record came. The Creighton and second half against Minnesota games aside, but they're still right on track for where they were supposed to be at this point in a lot of people's opinions. And that Michigan State game, you cannot overstate how important that was. And Fred Hoiberg said it himself. He said, we put a huge amount of emphasis on this game because they knew how critical it was coming off those two performances, getting blown out of the water at home by your in-state rival in a game that was never even close. And then following that up with the worst 20 minutes of basketball they played all season in that second half collapse at Minnesota. They desperately needed something to get this season back on track. And to beat Michigan State by 7 and finish them off to where they were in control that second half. They withstood every run. They handled adversity, which they had not done in the previous two games. It breathed some life back into this team and back into the season and back into the fan base. And so you can poo-poo all you want. Michigan State coming in at 4-4. Guess what? Michigan State was a top 5 team in the preseason rankings. They lost to Duke, Arizona, Wisconsin, and James Madison, who, turns out they're pretty good too. So, I mean, like, that schedule that they're playing is brutal. They're going to be fine. Like, Michigan State's going to be Michigan State. Tom Izzo's going to do what then they're going to be playing their best basketball in March. When you look back on the season, that win is going to be a signature win on Nebraska's resume. It could be a potential quad 1 win when all is said and done. But more importantly, it gives Nebraska some life again. In a point where people were already jumping ship, saying, here we go again. Here's another 13-18 season. Let's put together the coaching hot boards, all that stuff.
Yeah, I was starting.
Now the ship has been steadied a little bit, but now they got to do it again at Kansas State.
Yeah, I'm not poo-pooing that win. For one thing, Michigan State's pretty good. I mean, now I don't know what kind of
they're not like Michigan State's of old, but they're still good. They have 2 all-league players on their roster right now.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of season Michigan State will have. They're having issues, but they are talented. I mean, that was a rep.
Guess who they play Saturday? Baylor.
Yeah, it's tough. They're in a tough situation. They're in a tough spot.
Why do they overschedule? So
they do.
Is that part of their tradition, Robin?
Yeah, I mean, they're one of those programs that can do that.
And they're going to be in the 7-10 NCAA tournament game and be the 10 seed.
Yeah, and the next thing you know, they're in the Elite 8.
Rob, 2 things are really striking. One was Fred saying what he did about emphasis. You don't hear coaches do that all the time.
No.
They say, we really emphasize this game. This is
do.
a gigantic bounce back win. Oftentimes you hear coaches say they're all the same. We got to treat them all the same. No, that's not what Fred said.
No.
And then the other thing that was really striking was Izzo was borderline despondent.
Yeah.
After that,
usually he's like, complimentary, Nebraska's just a really good team. And he said that, but he was hard on his team. Like, because he knew that was a critical game for them.
Right.
They needed that one.
Yeah.
They're 0-2 in the Big Ten.
Oh, he's tearing out his hair trying to figure out what's going on with this team. You can tell. It was really striking to me. He's 68 years old. What it told me is he's not anywhere close to cruise control.
No.
I mean, this is a very passionate coach that took that loss really hard. In fact, you could barely hear him talk. You really kind of had to strain to hear him. He was not happy. So I liked is Nebraska shot 64% in the second half against an Izzo team and rebounded well. I mean, Mass had 14 rebounds.
They were the first team to shoot over 50% against Michigan State all season.
Yeah, and that's, as you mentioned, Arizona, Duke, and Wisconsin.
Well, and Robin, those threes that Nebraska made that were highly contested that's what Izzo really talked about in the post game. He almost kind of like they got lucky and hit those shots.
Yeah, they did. I mean, Sam Hoiberg's like fall away, quarter court shot. Yeah, as the shot clock expired, immediately followed by a CJ Wilcher banked in 3. Like, that's what Nebraska is. You saw it when they don't make shots, they get blown out against Creighton. When they make shots, look at the Minnesota game. They shot well over 50% from the field in the first half. They were attacking the rim, getting whatever they wanted. Second half, the offense went in shambles and they fell apart completely. So, that's just going to be what this season is about with this group, with the way that Fred Hoiberg plays offense. it's about shot making. Guys got to step up and hit tough shots. And you saw that with this, the guys across the board. But Keisei Tominaga getting going again was critical.
Now, Robin, the early net rankings came out again this week.
Mm-hmm.
Big Ten doesn't look great in the net. How can that change?
What are we talking about?
It changes every day.
What's it look like to you?
Well, it's
there's not a lot of top 50 teams in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and usually you see in almost the entire conference in the top 70. So Nebraska, I think on Monday they were 68th. So that was a 10-spot jump from where they were before the Michigan State game. So that shows you. And so now, but it is fluid. It changes every day.
But is the Big Ten going to be, instead of being a 10, what do they get? What's their most bids? They get 9 or 10?
I mean, it can be anywhere up to 11 or 12, depending on the year. But that's not going to be that this year. You're probably looking at 8. Yeah. Because the back end of the conference isn't what it used to be. Like the fact that Iowa's struggling as much as they are, and
Michigan's struggling.
Yeah. Michigan. And then, but you got some at Maryland too. That's another team that was supposed to be a lot better. So like it's still early. There's a lot left. But the problem is, as we've seen in previous years, is a lot of times at this point in the year is when the narrative is set about a conference and how good a conference is. So even if the league gets better and all of a sudden is starting playing really good basketball at the end of the year, the perception nationally is going to be that it's a down year for the Big Ten.
Well, then the better question is, what league will take the bids from the Big Ten? Is it going to be the Big 12? Is it going to be the ACC, the Big East? I mean, there's got to be another league that takes those 2 or 3 bids from the Big Ten. And the lower level conferences have kind of all turned into 1-bid leagues. Maybe the A10 gets 2. The Mountain West is a 4 or 5-bid league though now.
Yeah, so I mean it's December, so it's
early.
A lot left.
Yeah, we're having a March talk.
Yeah, so we'll see. But the thing with Nebraska is that Michigan State game was so critical, is because they need resume material right now. That's by far their best win of the season. The next one is Duquesne. So like Sunday, Kansas State, that's a huge one. Because to go and have a non-conference true road win against a Kansas State team that right now, I think last I checked, they were 80th in the net, but they're 45th in KenPom. Okay. So they're kind of all over the board. And Sip, we talked about this off air, that they're a good team. They're not what they were last year, but they're good.
8-2.
And that's on ESPN Plus, Rob?
It's
a streaming game, I believe.
Yeah.
On the exact same time as the volleyball championship game.
Yes, ESPN Plus, 2 p.m. Central.
That's awkward.
Well, the old Big 12 TV package gods didn't really care about the Nebraska volleyball Final Four game. I mean,
apparently not. Apparently not.
So it's going to be hard to watch both these things on pretty much if Nebraska's in the finals in that game as well.
Rob will be in Bramlage, though.
I will.
Yeah, Rob will be covering the game.
You're staying in Manhattan.
I am staying in Manhattan. It's a trip where you don't need to stay, but again.
It's like it'd be like me staying the night. It's like, oh, I'm gonna get a hotel on Grand Island.
It's
driving back,
long drive home.
It's gonna get a room in Grand Island, Lisa.
Good God,
too long of a drive.
Yeah, your wife doesn't watch these videos, which is good.
Letting all the secrets out.
Yeah, that'll be a fun trip. Bramlage is fun, and it'll be a close game.
I haven't been there since I haven't been there since the Big 12 days. So.
Yeah, it's always fun going to those places because it does take you back.
It does.
It feels like you're going back.
Those trips.
Yeah, I never go to Kansas City anymore.
Yep.
God, how often did we used to go
year.
to Kansas City?
Multiple times a year.
Yeah.
Media Day, conference championships, Big 10 or Big 12 tournament, all that stuff.
Is Tom Chattel gonna let you borrow like his Big 8 hat?
I know, I should wear it. He's got like a Letterman jacket with leather sleeves and all that. I should wear that.
Well, it should be a great weekend. Robin will have coverage of that. And a reminder, we have Abby Barmore in Tampa as well with full coverage of the NCAA Volleyball Final Four. And reminder, if you want to take advantage of a great special on Husker Online, no better time right now for our YouTube listeners. Get 2 months of Husker Online for $1 by simply using promo code NU1. That's promo code NU1 to receive 2 months for 2 months for $1. For Steve Sipple, Robin Washut, I'm Sean Callahan. Thanks for another edition of Husker Online.